a different kind of wise men coming out. I think they're a little different than it was in Jesus' time. Fortunately, there's no camel. I saw the Geico, that old Geico commercial, Hump Day commercial with the camel, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But they're bearing gifts, and I think they're probably different kind of gifts too. Thank you, guys. And I thought about the three wise men and the journey. Now, ours kind of came out of us at the north. So, not even from the east, but, the tradition is they're from the east. But they brought gifts to Jesus. And it's such a good story for us. Especially this time of the year, this is a great story. Not just because that happened to be how it falls in the Christian year, but this is the beginning of the new year. And we know God is making all things new through the power of the Holy Spirit. So God is always making things new. And it's always changing. Things are always changing. You ever notice that in the church? Sometimes it's faster change and sometimes it's slower. But things are always changing. Well, this year there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of things that are unknown in the coming year. And so this message of the three wise men is an important one for us today. And so thinking about the three wise men and this whole story, I think about who they were. They were outsiders, weren't they? They weren't the religious leaders. Most of the religious leaders weren't looking for a Messiah. Most of them couldn't recognize him when he did come. When it was made obvious to them, they still couldn't recognize who Jesus was. My previous sermon, we talked about the shepherds. They kind of the outsiders. The wise men were outsiders. They may not have even been Jewish. Now there's some controversy. We don't know for sure who they were, but there's Jewish people all over after Babylon destroyed Jerusalem. Jews went everywhere. So we don't know for sure who they were. But we know they traveled a good distance to get to Israel. And they were outsiders, so they didn't know so much about the church or about the temple, about the religious system at the time. But they came because God called them. And they came because they knew the stories. How they knew, we don't really know, but they knew that there was a Messiah. They saw the star, and they followed. But they didn't live life in Israel. So God helped them to know what they needed to do. And so now we get to the gifts that they brought. Have you really thought about the gifts? For years I didn't think about them. It was just a Bible story. I didn't think they meant anything special. But really they do. And especially in this whole context, because context is important. So in context, the wise men brought them very, very valuable gifts. Even today, some of them are valuable. Like gold. Gold is obviously valuable. Anybody who knows gold is valuable. It was a very valuable gift to give then as well as it is now. It was a gift fit for a king. Most people, there was a saying from the Middle Ages that talking about money, that copper's for people and silver's for the traders and gold is for the king. Very valuable. Even then it was very valuable. And so they brought gold to Jesus and gave Jesus gold. But then you think about the other two, frankincense. Now frankincense and myrrh, we can still get them today. Anybody who enjoys essential oils, it comes in essential oils. But in that time, these were also both gifts for royalty or for very special occasion. So frankincense is where incense came from. Now it could be used for other things as well, in perfumes and things, but that was where incense came from. So an incense was used in the temple. And it was definitely a godly and a gift for a king and a gift for somebody who was very, very special to God. So frankincense was special. You didn't just go down to Walmart and look at the essential oils and see the one that says frankincense. It wasn't that way. And the same thing with myrrh. And so myrrh was a royal gift as well. Very valuable. But it was a royal gift because that is what went into oil for anointing. Now today, usually when pastor anoints somebody, we use olive oil. And if you look in the book of worship, there's a special place where we bless the olive oil so we can anoint people with olive oil. And that traditionally in the first century, but they would have added myrrh to it. So when a king was consecrated, when a king was anointed, he was anointed with oil with myrrh in it. Now both of these are expensive because they were hard to come by. They came from certain trees, and what they had to do is they had to score the bark of the tree. And it's kind of like maple syrup up in Vermont. They score the bark and they put a little pot under it. Well, here they just score the bark, and it very slowly seeps down to the bottom of the cup and forms this kind of a big glob. It's kind of hard, and it's a resin is what it is. And so it would form this resin. And it was very expensive. So that's why not everybody had it available. And so these were gifts that they provided Jesus with and his family. Now, what would they need a gift like that for? We sometimes, the context is everything. And in our context, if all of a sudden we came into a lot of money, they would have trouble spending it. If we inherited money or somehow we came into a lot of money, we wouldn't have, if we wanted to, we wouldn't have much trouble spending it, would we? Well, see, in the first century, it was different. In the first century, first of all, the economy was different. They kind of recognized there's only so much stuff out there. And so, if you wanted a new outfit of clothes, which that's where most of your wealth came, was in clothes for your average person. They were handed down generation to generation and patched. That's why Jesus gave illustrations about patching clothes, because they were valuable. Well, say you want a new pair of pants. You didn't just go to the store. You had to find somebody to make them and order it, and in a few months you might have pants ready for you. There wasn't the market economy that we have today, and so this wealth would not have been near as much for their lives normally. But see, Jesus and his family, Joseph and Mary, their life wasn't normal. It wasn't normal the minute the Holy Spirit spoke to them. So it wasn't too long after that, because remember who the wise men went to first? They went to Herod, and Herod wanted to know where Jesus was, because he wanted to do away with Jesus. He wanted to kill the Messiah before the Messiah could even get started. And so life wasn't normal for them, and they had to flee for their lives because Herod was going to kill them. So you think about it, it could be enough of a struggle for us to go on vacation for a week or two, can't it? A lot of times we got to save for all year. If we're going to take a really nice vacation, we got to save, and then sometimes we have to pay for it afterwards too. But in the first century, people like Joseph and Jesus' family lived on the edge. We call it paycheck to paycheck. I don't think they had paychecks then, but we call it paycheck to paycheck. That they were always just on the edge of not having enough food, just on the edge of not having the things that they had to have. And so think about the expense of going to Egypt. Hundreds of miles. Maybe a month or two. I don't remember, I didn't look that up. It was a long ways. And then they had to live there. Now, the myrrh and the frankincense and the gold comes into perspective. Because they likely needed that so that they could make this trip. So God provided them with the things they needed, even though they didn't know they were going to need it. They didn't know what they were going to do with this stuff. But God provided it for them in the time that they needed it. So now I think about our different kind of wise men. And they brought us some gifts. Now somehow I don't think there's going to be gold, frankincense, and incense in here, and myrrh. But I had thought about this, and the things that God uses and provides for us to help us in the future. Because the wise men were guided by a star sent by God. So it's like the Holy Spirit was guiding them, was drawing them to Israel, to the promised land, to the Messiah. The Holy Spirit was doing this. You learn in seminary, wherever God is, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit is, it's all wrapped up together. And so they are leading us in a certain way. And they are giving us gifts. Each one of you are a gift given by God. But we also have different types of resources and different types of skills. And so I got some of these gifts, and looking at them, we could probably figure out who brought what. So who all knits or crochets? Yeah, Margaret does. A few of you do. Anybody who knits and crochets, do you need these? Don't you have tons of them? It's called a stash. What are we going to do with these? Well, I know what we do right now. We make prayer shawls. And you think that that was a simple little thing. I made a prayer shawl one time. I called it a Jacob's Coat prayer shawl, and it was one of the ones that somebody was touched like you wouldn't believe. And all it was is a bunch of these little balls of yarn, and you make them into a prayer shawl, and they're all mixed up, and they're all different colors. But God was making something beautiful out of scraps. And so who knows what we can make out of it? Who knows? But see, the thing is it's our talents and our time. Remember, we talk about that every week. But today it's our talents and our time that the Holy Spirit is using to help the church to grow. So that's one example. And then this is another one. Boy, this is a colorful one. You can see how creative I got this morning. Well, I thought I had some gift bags, but I don't. But a glue stick. This is my favorite. Google Eyes. And pipe cleaners. I'm sure none of us have any idea who brought these. So what do we do with these? Well, we make gifts for what? We take them to the teachers. And they're nothing spectacular, although sometimes it takes a lot of thinking to come up with them. But don't we bless the teachers that way? And hasn't our church been blessed because they were blessed? See, God is giving us the raw materials to do things in our church. Well, there's three wise men, and we had our three, and so there's one left. So Bill and I talked about it, and so here's what Bill brought. Anybody, can you see that? That's bobber, yeah. Yeah. All kind of fishing. Well, a little bit of fishing stuff. Hooks and, I don't know, these are supposed to be worms. I'm kind of suspicious. They never helped me when I went fishing. Well, I feed fish, and so they just take the worm off and they taste that, and then they're just not interested anymore. But again, you know, they're only so useful by themselves, but they illustrate that God uses these things. If you're going to go fishing, you need these things. And it's a nice metaphor for us because that's what we do. Is we're fishermen. We go out and we try to draw people into God's kingdom. So you think about all three of these things. These are gifts of raw material. Just like frankincense and myrrh. You get this chunk of myrrh, what are you going to do with it? It's got to be used. It's got to be processed. It's got to be changed for it to be of value. And the gifts that God gives us, they're like that raw material, and it's got to be changed. And the way it's changed is through the Holy Spirit working with us, helping us find a way to reach out to other people. Just like the gold and the myrrh and the frankincense provided for Jesus and for his family, provided protection, provided all the things so that they can survive and thrive, so that when they came back to the promised land, that Jesus was able to accomplish his ministry. And the church is here. And we don't know what God is going to do in the next months, next year. We have changes. You know, we're probably going to a 2-point charge. We don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen with this special called General Conference. We don't know what's going to happen. Anybody know? I wish somebody could tell me. Because we're all anxious. We don't know what's going to happen. But you know what? That's when God's Holy Spirit is working. I know this is the times when God's Holy Spirit is acting. And we can be sensitive to that. To where God is leading us to be. And who God is leading us to be. God is giving us the gifts to use to strengthen ourselves. And as God is making something new, just like God was making something new when Jesus was born and Jesus' ministry brought something new. God is bringing something new. This happens every few hundred years, and I think this is happening in the big church today. It's another one of those Reformation moments. It's another one of those times like when John Wesley came and changed things. Martin Luther came and changed things. You even go back to when when the church split into the Catholic and Orthodox. Every once in a while, there's change, and God uses that change to make the church better. And I know God's doing that now. And so God is giving us the gifts that we need, the raw materials that we need. He's giving us the people that we need so that our church can move forward. And I know God's in control, and I know it's going to be wonderful. So our wise men might have been different, and these gifts might have been different, and they might not be worth quite as much money, but they're incredibly valuable to us as we think about what we are becoming and who we are.